I have another farm for you. So, if you've been here before, you may remember that a while ago I did a farm tour of my year 11 perfected Stardew farm. Since then, I've done a playthrough of a whole new farm and reached 100% perfection in that one as well. The main difference between these farms, however, is that this farm is modded. As obviously I've played the whole of vanilla Stardew Valley before and I streamed Stardew Valley, I wanted to think of a way that would keep making these streams entertaining, both for other people but also for me as well, because playing the same game over and over, it can get a little boring on both sides. So mods actually turned out to be a great way to add more things to the gameplay, to the story, and keep things more entertaining for a longer period of time. This also means that this is my second Stardew Valley farm, and therefore decorating has changed a little bit. I do have a similar kind of style, but it's definitely developed a little bit since my first farm. I personally feel like I've improved a little bit, but I mean that's entirely subjective, so who knows? So like I say, this farm is modded, so I'll explain a little bit about that before we get into the actual tour. I have a number of mods on this farm that can be split into gameplay and quality of life and aesthetic. Now the aesthetic mods are the ones that you're obviously going to see more of in this tour, but I'm quite picky about my aesthetic mods. I tend to go for ones that kind of fit well into vanilla Stardew. That is of course a personal preference, but I find that when I'm decorating it means that I can pretty much still stick to those same styles that I could in vanilla Stardew, but maybe just with some additional items. If you are interested in seeing the mods I use, I actually do have a big list of them. You can find a link in the bio that will take you to a Google sheet that has all of the mods listed and split into categories. If you're interested in getting into playing modded Stardew and you're a little bit confused on where to get started, the Stardew wiki is a fantastic place to start. It has a really easy guide that helps you get into it, but if there are particular mods that I'm using and you're not really sure which one's which or how to install them properly, feel free to shoot me a DM and I'd be more than happy to help you out. Now, a little bit about this farm itself. This is filmed in spring year 7. Now I actually hit perfection in autumn year 6, but I felt that this farm was better shown off in the spring. It's kind of designed for those green colours, so that's why I decided to wait and film the farm tour in spring. It is also a forest farm and I am married to Sebastian. The tour is going to work pretty much the exact same as it did last time. I will show you the farmhouse, the main farm, the Ginger Island farm, and the Ginger Island beach hut. If you've watched my previous farm tour, you'll definitely notice some similarities, but I've tried really hard to try out some different styles and some different decorating ideas. Playing with mods, but also just starting afresh with a new farm gave me the chance to play around with some new layouts, and also because it was a different farm style, it meant that I had some new barriers to work with. But I think I made it work, and honestly, I actually think this is probably my favourite farm that I've made out of the two. I really hope that you like it, and let's get into the tour. Okay, we'll start out here. The first area that I work in for any farm is always the area right below the farmhouse. It's just, I don't know, it's the easiest, it's right there, it means you don't have to walk around a lot. Also, when you first start a farm, there's a lot of area to clear, so yeah, that's pretty much where things begin. And for this farm, I pretty much just kept the original layout. Obviously some things had to change, like getting a hold of the recipes for the trees and the Junimo huts, but yeah, the layout is pretty much the same as how it began. I'll show you up this a little bit as well. So up here we have the crafting area, the workbench, that's what it's actually called, and then the chests around it that the workbench can access so that I can craft things way more easily by keeping my resources in there. They did start off pretty organized, so we have things like, I don't know, flooring, monster drops, iron bars and stuff up here, but then honestly and inevitably they did get more and more messy as I just needed places to store kind of miscellaneous crap that I wanted to keep but didn't really have like a specific use for. But generally here is where I keep anything to do with dungeon diving. Here is stuff to do with fishing. Here was meant to be like anything to do with farming, so like there's a lot of seeds and scarecrows and things like that. And then yeah, there's just kind of overflow areas as well. There's a couple of seed makers here, and there were a couple more machines, but those have actually now been moved into the shed, which I'll show you guys later. Over here is what I call the gifting chest, so it's right at the edge of the farm, and it's where I store everybody's favourite things. So when I was trying to get my hearts up with everybody, this was really useful because I could just grab things on my way out of the farm. A little further down here is the mill. I don't get a huge amount of use out of it. It does help for, you know, making things a little bit more valuable, but it's not super used, and it's mostly for decoration. But I do really like how the mill looks with this mod, so it looks pretty, and I'm happy with it. There's also then a little seating area. Whenever I'm kind of stuck with a small area that I don't really know what to do with, it usually does end up like a little seating area. I do just find that they're easy to work into those smaller places. Alright, so back down into the first farming area. So this is the forest farm map, which basically means that, well, it looks like a forest, obviously, but it also means that not all of the map is tillable. You can't plant crops on all of it. You can see over here, for example, that there's grass underneath, so I couldn't plant any crops here, so the area that you actually can farm is smaller than, say, a standard farm. That basically means that all of my farming areas are split up into, you know, different kind of zones, which actually I kind of liked. It meant that I could kind of work more with different areas and integrating them together, so it was kind of really fun to work with after I got over the initial worry of how I was gonna make everything work. A little further down here, we have 2 fish ponds. These fish ponds are midnight squid and salmon. This area over here is automated, but it runs through the void salmon row, the salmon row. The void salmon row actually is in a fish pond further down, so I had to move that along manually, but I mean, it's not really too much of an arduous task, but it does move everything through and ages it so that I can just collect it when it's ready and sell it. Down here, this is actually one of the cooler, well, maybe cool is maybe not the right word, but this is honestly one of the most useful automation rigs that I've set up. So here, I have a whole lot of bait sat in this chest. I also have 2 bait machines on either side. They don't really produce that much bait, but they do kind of help to keep it running if I forget to check it. And then we also have a recycling machine working alongside this as well. So the bait comes in here. Every morning, the bait is distributed into all of these crab pots over here. Next day, it fishes up a bunch of stuff, crayfish, periwinkles, or trash. Trash automatically gets fed into here, and then put back into this chest where it all waits for me. As you can see, the trash is starting to pile up a little bit, so I am probably going to have to put some more recycling machines in, or maybe put a recycling machine rig somewhere else that I can just kind of transfer that to. But that's a problem that I'll solve another day. So further down here, this is actually the final area of my farm that I designed, and I'm really happy with it. I really like how it looks. Stardew Expanded got an update while I was working on this farm, and one of the things that it added was all these kind of shrubs and plants and fake crops and mushrooms as well. It also made it really easy to decorate things and make it look kind of natural as well, but also not just have to work with what was already given to you on the farm. So it worked perfectly for a forest farm, to be honest. So I'll show you the right side first. So over here we have the well, and then here's the void salmon pond that I was telling you about, and all the silos are up here. There's also a line of lightning rods sitting up here that collect lightning to make battery packs every single time it storms. So here I have another chest, and this works with automate as well. So I stack this really, really high with hay. This is actually what I would consider it to be when it's getting low. I stack this really high with hay, and then that automatically distributes into the silos, so they're pretty much always full. It means that I have to make less trips to Marnie, which is always a blessing, because I mean, you never know when she's going to be there. And also means that I don't really have to worry about my animals starving, because I know that they've always got food. Back along this way, we have this path that kind of just passes underneath the pond, but it also loops back around, and here we have a couple of cabins. So these cabins I'm basically using like sheds. One is kind of for decoration, the other is being used for preserve jars. So I'll show you the decoration one first. And the reason actually, before I go in, the reason I used cabins instead was just mainly for decoration. I really like how these cabins look. I like how they have the little decorations on them that change with the seasons. And I never used cabins in my old farm, so it was a really cool little new thing to be able to work with and make it look a bit more, I don't know, sociable, lived in maybe, rather than it just being me on this farm. So in here, as you may be able to tell, it was originally just used for fish storage. So there are some legendary fish in here, as well as pretty much just any fish that I kind of feel like looks cool. And a lot of fish from Expanded as well, so like the kitty fish and the razor fish. This was actually originally going to be a mini aquarium, but if you have a cabin on your farm, one of the things that you have to deal with is the fact that this packet of seeds and this bed cannot be moved by you. If you want to get it removed, you're going to have to invite somebody else to come and join the farm and move them for you. I couldn't really be bothered with that. It's pretty easy to do. I just ended up not doing it. So I ended up making it into kind of like a little guest house. So it's got a little TV in here. It's obviously got the bed. It's got a lot of plants. And yeah, I ended up quite happy with how it turned out. Over on this side, we have the less decorated one. As you can see, this one is just completely filled with preserve jars, and they are all making jelly. When I was grinding for the golden clock, you know, these just extra little spaces to be able to make artisans were really, really useful, and they really helped get the money up so that I could afford that and so that I could take that off my perfection progress. Now that I'm perfected, I'm still using it because it still just kind of helps bring that money in. So when I'm buying more items for decoration, you know, I'm not bankrupting myself, which is really nice because I am focusing mainly on decoration on this farm now. This farm also has its own little garden out here. I don't use this for profit. I literally just plant flowers here every season for decoration, and then when the season ends, obviously plant new ones. But yeah, it's a cute little corner. I think if I was a farmhand, I would be very happy here. Back down this way, so this is the area down to the woods and next to Marnie's, but up here we have the winery. So this is actually a reskin of the slime hutch. It still acts and functions as a slime hutch inside. Or it would if I didn't fill it with kegs. But again, this makes a lot of money. It was filled with ancient fruit, but the slimeberry crop just produces so much. It's so useful for just making huge quantities of wine. So yeah, very, very, very useful. And yeah, this is pretty much packed as much as it can be. There are some like corners where you can't put kegs down, but other than that, it's doing a whole lot of work for me. Down here is another one of those little corners that I kind of struggle with because I never really know what to do with them, so I ended up making a really cute little walled garden. There is a Junimo hut in here. It seems a little pointless, I understand that, because it's such a small area, but because it's down in this corner, I really forget about it a lot of the time. So I tend to just plant something that doesn't need replanting, like trellis crops, and I let the Junimos just kind of take care of it. And then when the season ends, I replant and so on and so forth. It also actually has its own batch of kegs, only a few, so it doesn't really get a huge amount of stuff done, but I mean, it kind of keeps doing a little bit of work and fills a little bit of space as well. This winery also has like a little decorative outside section. This is unfunctional, and this is kind of like a decoration style that I wasn't used to when I made it, but I do quite like how it turned out. It looks a little bit messy and a little bit honest, and you know, I like that. You'll see that both this farm and the Ginger Island farm, I was going for kind of like an overgrown but lived in and used kind of vibe, and I do feel like these little areas are kind of like what helps to sell it. Here is where the dinos and the bunnies and the ducks hang out. So if you saw my last farm tour, you'll see that this is actually really different to how I had the animals set up in my old farm. In my old farm, I always made these huge kind of like pastures and fields for the animals to hang out in, and I would plant grass all over the place, and I would just let them mow that down, and that would be how they got fed. For this farm, with the forest farm, quite like a lot of people, I ended up using these kind of little nooks to put my animals in. It's really nice. It gives them like their own little separate area. Also, again, it's grass, so you can't plant anything in there anyway, so buildings is kind of like what it's best used for. But they're small enough that it would mean that any grass would have to be replaced pretty much almost on a daily basis. So I have ended up going down the hay route before, and you've already seen how I've organized it so that they pretty much never run out of hay. So it does work. And then I use these decorations. Again, these are from Stardew Valley Expanded to make it look a bit more like a kind of wildy field. Inside these cubes, they still look pretty much the exact same as they would in vanilla. In fact, they do look the same as they would in vanilla, apart from the fact that they each have their own little automation rig set up with the auto-collector. So the auto-collector picks up eggs every morning. They then get deposited into this chest. The eggs are then put into this mayonnaise machine and turned into mayonnaise, and also any fur or fluff that's picked up from rabbits gets pulled into the looms and then given back, and then you end up with a little collection of rabbit's feet, cloth, and mayonnaise, or dinosaur mayonnaise if that's the only animal that you've got in there. Alright, now back up here we do have a little collection of trees. There was another tree here, but as you can see, it got struck by lightning and I'm still salty about it. But more importantly, here is where there is oh my god, look at all those truffles. Here is another big crop area, and you can see the Junimos hanging out here as well. The Junimos don't seem to want to really hang out that much, so I'm gonna spawn a few more here. There we go. And you can see them running off and doing all their work. And then moving on up here, just, yep, even more crops, even more crops, even more crops. This is the bigger crop area. We also have the section in the middle with the honeybees. Again, this works on automate, so the honey is automatically collected. It goes into the kegs, is made into mead, and then comes out here to be deposited. It also collects mahogany seeds from these that worked into the design. That wasn't intentional, but I mean, it's still useful. And there's still some coffee beans hanging out here because coffee beans, actually, you need 5 coffee beans to go into 1 keg, and I'm 1 short, so they've been there for like 2 years. And again, if you move over here, this is where all the barnyard animals are. You can see the pigs have picked up a lot of truffles and have managed to block themselves in, so let me just grab those real quick. So this area has pigs, emus, cows, and what are technically sheep and goats, but are redesigned through a mod to look like a deer and alpacas respectively. Up here is the tractor shed. The tractor mod is it's a mod all of its own and pretty much just helps with efficiency. You can kind of mass water, mass till, mass chop down pretty much anything. It's very useful. And then heading up here, so I don't really know why I put a skull next to Grandpa's shrine, but it's there now. But up here we have I used this kind of like little hidden area to drop a meteorite, and then I also made sure to put like little radioactive ore and kind of weird looking crystals next to it to look to just kind of look like something weird was happening over here, just to make myself laugh. And then over here next to Grandpa's actual shrine, there's kind of like some ore around, there's some flowers, there's a couple of Yoba signs, there's a little seat so that well, I mean, you can't actually sit on it, but it is a seat, I promise, with the idea that the farmer could sit there and spend some time with their grandpa. And yeah, it's a really simple little area that again is made to look kind of overgrown and not abandoned, but just kind of like not necessarily hugely frequently visited by a lot of people. But I didn't want to leave it blank or undecorated or anything like that, because it's kind of those little spaces that kind of help make a farm look like a farm, I guess. Okay, so out here we also have these areas growing strawberries. One of the tricks I've learned in kind of making a farm look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing is to not necessarily always feel like you have to go with the biggest sprinklers or like the most efficient farming setup. Having these smaller crop areas, I mean, they make money still, but you can kind of like thread paths through them, you can make them look like little raised gardens, you can do all sorts of stuff with them, and it'll make it look a little bit more natural and a little bit more, I don't know, cottagecore. So there is another Junimo hut up here, and we also have the big froggy statue up here. And then up in this corner, you can see this entire farm actually only has one shed, aside from a grandpa shed, which is part of Stardew Expanded, and is essentially just another big shed, but it's not on the farm, it's in another little area. So if we head inside, this is what it looks like. We have a huge area of preserve jars. All of the kegs are in the other shed. I probably won't show you those because I promise it's just a big area filled with kegs. It's not that exciting, but that's why there's no kegs in here. We also have rigs for wood chippers, for bone makers? What are these called? The things that make bones into fertilizer, those. Crystallariums, these originally were making like all different kinds of crystals, but when we did end up changing it so that they were all making diamonds, so that I could make fairy dust. And then in this top corner, we have a whole lot of areas to smelt ore into bars. We have some geode crushers, and we have a little bit of charcoal kilns as well. So the reason that there's a couple of charcoal kilns in there was because I kind of found a way to make it not necessarily entirely automatic, but it was on its way to being that way. So what I would do is I would take, oh my god. I would take wood out of here. Now that I think about it, actually, if I involved the wood chippers in here, that would be a way more efficient system than me having to move it myself. But anyway, I could take the wood out of here, pop it in here, that would automatically get made into charcoal. That would create coal. That coal could then go in here and power the automate rig to keep all of these turned on as long as there was ore to feed them. I'm not making a very good job of showing the example because there's already so much coal in here, but I mean, I hope you can kind of see where I'm coming from. Alright, over this way. The cave is up here. I haven't actually decorated the cave yet. I intend to, but I haven't done it yet. And then over this way are my 3 statues. So I have my one that creates iridium, my one that gives me gifts for people's birthdays. So today is Kent's birthday, so here's a love gift for him, and a prismatic shard from you. Up here is the path to go up to the backwoods, and we also have a bunch of mushroom trees here as well. 2 more silos, and then tucked in next to that is the greenhouse. So I don't have a super huge greenhouse mod, however, it is pretty sizable and it's really useful for growing fairy roses. So alongside making all of the diamonds, I'm also growing a whole lot of fairy roses in here as well to make fairy dust to speed up production for my kegs. So that basically I could make iridium quality wine very quickly and make a whole lot of money. Over on this side we have fruit trees. I do intend to plant a mango and a banana sapling down here when I can get a hold of them. Not that it's that hard, I keep forgetting to, if I'm being honest. In here we have a bunch of slime berries which create all of those crops that we use for artisans, and then I'm also doing some monster mushrooms in here as well. And we have 2 rows of strawberries because I mean they're just a pretty good staple to always have. Down here is where I tap trees for various things such as pine tar, maple syrup, oak resin, and a lot of honey as well running down the middle. This is also how I tap sap. Underneath here are my 4 obelisks. We have Ginger Island, Calico Desert, the beach, and the mountains, and we also have a line of solar panels as well, just so that I have a steady supply of battery packs even if it doesn't rain for a long time. This joins up into that original farm area here, but also we can run up this way, and up here are the stables. This is also where the dog hangs out, and back here to the little warp area as well. And then that brings us all the way back to the front. So that's the whole of the farm, and next I will show you the farmhouse itself. So in here, this one does have a similar kind of theme to my original farmhouse. However, I've tried to come up with some different ideas in here just so that it doesn't look identical, but I can appreciate that this area does look quite similar to the vanilla farmhouse. So I won't spend too much time on it. Over here, we have a lot of fridges with a lot of ingredients in them so that I can pretty much create a whole load of recipes on demand. Watch this be really embarrassing and there be no recipes I can cook. Oh, okay, that turned out better than expected. But yeah, a lot of recipes I can kind of make straight away without having to wait around or go and search for ingredients because they're all stored in these fridges down here. We also have some big fireplaces over here, and then up here we have kind of like a little home office. There's a couple of computers in here, one of which is actually functional because it's the farm computer. The other is just a dwarf gadget and it's used for decoration. This area, so the thought for this area was that it would look kind of like a little D&D area. It ended up being really, really difficult to make it, you know, kind of look like that straight off, but we had some like kind of cool props. We had a little chicken like figurine. We also had a world map that we could think was like the fantasy map of whatever the campaign was. And the reason I did this is because I'm married to Sebastian, and Sebastian has a really cool cutscene where you play a game that is essentially just D&D with him and Sam. Over here we have the bedroom. So I've moved the rooms around a little bit in this playthrough. So instead of having the bedroom be here and the kids' room be here, which is where they start out kind of in standard, I have moved them around a little bit just to kind of like play around with the different shapes and the different possibilities with different layouts. So we have the fish tank above the bed that's full of jellyfish, a little sofa, a big old Junimo plushie, the sewing machine is down here, and we have the butterfly hutch, which is the reason why we have little butterflies hanging around the house as well. In here we have a sunroom. There's Sebastian. In here we have a sunroom which has a crab in it for some reason, but I mean he has as much right to be in there as anybody else. And then so down here is where I kind of tried to do something something a little bit different. I'm still not sure if I really, if it really worked, if I really like it, but it's how it's looking. So instead of a big room, I kind of turn this area into a long hallway that goes past what is now the kids' room and then up and into here, which is kind of like a wine tasting room, a wine showroom. I don't know, but there's different kinds of wine in here. There's some more machinery in here that's, I mean, it could be functional. It's not, but it could be. And also like a little bench to, I don't know, sit and appreciate the wine. I just kind of wanted to do something a little bit different, you know? So it's meant to be like its own little room, and it's also separated with a fish tank, mainly because trying to set up walls within a house ended up being quite difficult. So I used some stone walls for the side, and then yeah, I ended up separating it with a fish tank with some more of the fish that I didn't really have room for in the other aquarium area, but I still wanted to keep, like the bonefish and the gemfish. Down here is what I turned into the kids' room. So we have two little areas in here. We have two little beds. We have one child wearing cat ears and the other wearing a link cat. They have these colourful play mats, a little TV of their own, fish tanks, nature decorations, a strange doll which is almost definitely cursed, and what every child needs, a giant sloth skeleton. Truly, I just didn't really know what else to do with it, and I mean, it's what every child wants, right? And then the last area I have to show you is something that is actually pretty cool. So because I had Grandpa's shed, it meant that I actually had a different area where I could use casks to age wine, and that meant that I didn't necessarily need the basement in order to do that, so I ended up turning it into a library. We've got all these bookshelves. We've kind of got like a little area here where I hold elixirs and prismatic shards and cool stuff like that. We also have a big old fish tank over here with the legendary extended family. And then if we head out and go up this way, there's kind of this cursed little area. I don't really know why I did this. It was kind of based on the wizard's like altar area. But we have a scary looking statue, a lot of flames, and then a bottle of what is actually cranberry wine, but kind of looks like a blood on an altar. Yeah, I don't know why my builds always come back to this, but we were mainly just kind of doing it to amuse ourselves. And by ourselves, I mean me and my chat, who are probably sick of watching me try and do this, because this took a while. This took a while to set up. I tried a whole bunch of different layouts, but eventually we got there, and I'm happy with how it turned out. Something that's also actually cool about this greenhouse mod is it connects a tunnel. So it's back in the greenhouse, down here, back in your own basement, which I think is really cool. So yeah, that's the whole of the main farm and the farmhouse, so you know the drill. It's time to go and check out the Ginger Island farm. Okay, so I did end up sleeping through a couple of days just because it kept raining on Ginger Island and I wanted to show it in the sun. But we're all good to go now, and we may as well start in the house because why not? Again, you can kind of see how I ended up kind of fixating on splitting rooms or finding different ways to split big rooms up in this save file. I always struggle with this bigger room on Ginger Island, so I wanted to try and tackle it in this save file, and I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. I ended up splitting it into a bedroom in the top half and then just using bookcases to make a living room on the bottom. I went for more of a reddish theme for this one, so we've got the red covers on the bed, the red sofas, and as always, a lot of plants, a couple of fish tanks around, and there's also a little dining area over here as well. I used backward stresses to make kind of like a bar area over here, and once again, even though they can't visit the island, I did make a little kids room in here as well. And then up here, again, we have another little sunroom. We have lots of plants in pots this time, as well as some seasonal plants and some decorative house plants. A lot of sun coming through these windows and vines on the walls. And then fertilizer and soil retainer and speed grow on either side for a bit of decoration as well, and to make it look, again, lived in and used. Alright, and finally, out into Ginger Island. I absolutely love how the Ginger Island house looks with this mod, and if I'm honest, I'm really happy with how this area turned out. I did struggle with it at first. I'd really struggled with it, but I ended up dedicating like a big chunk of a stream to just getting through it. Laying out all the crop areas, kind of dividing spaces up, and then just going in and decorating it until there was pretty much no more space to decorate. And it paid off. Yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I'll show you around. So up here, I do have a little area, again, that's automated with these crab pots. So it's a similar kind of concept. All the crab pots up here, a chest, 2 worm bins making bait, and a recycling machine over here as well. This obelisk is blocked off, but it doesn't really matter because I have the return scepter, so we're all good on that front. Back down here, so across the top of the farm, we have all of these fruit trees and some sunflowers by the entrance here as well. I also use the fake crops to make these extra fields up on the grass, so it does make the farm look a little bit bigger, even though I'm not actually harvesting anything from here. But it also creates these nice little paths to walk through up into the frog cave and to the cliff above the farm. I only just noticed that I haven't put a pressure nozzle on the sprinkler and this outer layer isn't watered, so please ignore that, because I'm going to. So we have this kind of central line coming through with the brick flooring, which has blueberries and cranberries, and then these bigger outside areas with cactus fruit and pineapple. Everything on this farm is a crop that doesn't have to be replanted, and that is because I use a mod called Island Gatherers that basically means that the parrots collect crops like a Junimo would, and not having to replant the crops means that basically I, if I wanted to, could completely forget about this island and it would still run exactly the same. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to plant crops. I don't need to collect things. I don't need to move things into kegs. It all just happens. Further down here, I also have an area of tea leaves that I can run through like this, and then an extra little area of crops over here as well. Some more fake crops to kind of help make the farm again look a little bit bigger, even in awkward spaces. And up in this area on the left, I have the Parrot Pot, which is where all of the collected crops get dropped into, and then all of these working on automation. So you might notice that actually these are still running on automation, even though they're not technically touching the chest that's kind of the head of the rig. That is because this mod is really cool and you can configure things differently, and one of the things that I've done is I've configured the gravel pathing to basically act as a conductor. That means even if something is not touching the chest, if both sides are touching the same section of gravel pathing, it will be passed through like normal. So I can have a path running through the center of here, and the fact that there's gravel acting as a conductor means that it still works as part of the same automation rig. I also have extended Ginger Island through a mod. Over here we have a whole bunch of strawberry plants, an area up here that's intentionally left empty so that ginger can spawn. Further up there is a whole lot more cactus fruit and more mahogany trees, splitting it up, and this big field full of strawberries. I've also added some decorations towards the edge. I didn't want these to look too organized, so you can see they're kind of like a bit more sparse, a bit more random. There's some grass just kind of like randomly spotted in there, and it's to kind of bridge this gap between the really heavily decorated area and the beach, which is as of now empty. I do intend to add some decorations to the beach, but even then they're going to be a bit more sparse and a little bit more wild and overgrown, so it kind of helps that transition along rather than it just going from a block of very heavily decorated stuff to a block of not very heavily decorated stuff. You know what I mean? There's this area here. I don't really know what this is. I didn't intend for it to look like a grave, but it really does look like one, so I'll let you decide who's buried there, because I don't know. And then back along here is another seating area. Remember how I said when I struggle with smaller spaces, I ended up just putting a seating area there? Yep, here it is again. And you know what? That actually is everything. So that's the Ginger Island farm, the Ginger Island house, and the normal farm and the normal farmhouse. I really enjoyed putting this farm together. This is my second save file, so what is happening here? Alright, anyway, this is my second save file, so it's been really nice to kind of take the skills that I learned from decorating my first save file. All my crops are disappearing. I go, where can I stand? There's not just like a pile of empty stuff. Okay, maybe like up here. There we go. Alright, pretend you didn't see that. Let's try that again. I've really enjoyed decorating this farm and using kind of like the decoration skills that I picked up in my first playthrough and implementing them in this second one. I do already have ideas for what I want to do for my third save file, but like I say, I do have stuff that I'm working on this save file, so I'm going to be sticking around on it for a little bit longer yet. And that's it. So those are all the farm type areas. There's actually some other areas on this map that I haven't shown you yet because I'm not quite finished with them, but I'd be pretty interested in doing a tour once those are done. It's a big area and it's gonna take a little bit of a while. I really enjoyed working with this farm. I streamed pretty much every single day of gameplay, so the regulars who have been around since the beginning have definitely seen it go from a 5 parsnip farm to what it is now. It took a lot of time. We definitely took a chill route to perfection where I spent a lot of time decorating and just kind of hanging out, getting to know all the new characters, exploring all the mods, particularly Stardew Expanded. That mod is huge, and there's a lot to learn about it. As for what's next for Stardew streams, so we're actually still playing this farm. We're doing some post-perfection stuff, some extra decorating, like I said, and also, you know, things like getting golden chickens, rearranging some stuff, and just those general kind of finishing pieces. I do, however, also have some ideas for what I'd like to do next. I'd like to explore some more mods. I definitely have my eye on Ridgeside Village in particular, and for farm map, I think I'm probably gonna go for Hilltop Farm. I don't know why, I think it'll be a good challenge to myself to try and decorate that, but also I feel like it's a really cute map in itself, so we'll see. I'm definitely gonna stick with modded Stardew, I think there's just so much potential out there, there's so much cool gameplay, there's so many cool designs, but also really funny stuff that's out there as well that makes streams really fun. So yeah, it's another perfected farm ticked off, but I am most definitely remaining a Stardew streamer. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you like the farm. If you haven't caught a Stardew stream before and you would like to, you are very welcome to go and check out my Twitch. I'll pop the link in the description. I stream Stardew very regularly. I do stream some other games as well, but Stardew is my main game. We also have a really cute little community and a lot of the people in there play Stardew as well, so if you're looking for friends, advice, anything like that, it's kind of the perfect place to check out. And if you haven't seen the Year 11 farm that I mentioned before, you can find that tour on my channel as well. Again, that is a completely vanilla farm, so no mods whatsoever. So if you're interested to see the kind of decorating that I do without any mods, that is the best place to check it out. You very much know the drill, all the socials and everything are down there as well. And yeah, I would very much love to see you in one of my Stardew streams sometime. But hey, either way, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.